Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily. Coming up, we got Law Murray here filling in for S. We're going to talk a little bit about the games last night. Warriors blow it, even though Nikola Jokić wasn't out there. So did the Wolves, even though the Pacers were missing 4 starters. And we got Fred Katz to talk about how the Knicks are surviving without Jalen Brunson. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Law. Appreciate you staying up with me and filling in for S here on, what was this, Tuesday morning. Weird night last night, Law. Weird night. You go into the night and you say, oh, okay, the Nuggets don't have Jokić. They don't have Jamal Murray. They're playing the Warriors. The Warriors are hot right now. Surely, Warriors going to pick up another win with Jimmy Butler. We've got all these things we can say about how, wow, they haven't been tested yet, because no one was out there. Out the window because the Warriors lose that game. The Wolves, they're at home. They've got the Pacers. Pacers missing 4 starters. We talk about how the Wolves, they've been on this hot streak. They're getting business done. They come out flat, Law. They blow the game to the Pacers. Let's dig in a little bit because I think they're bad losses for both teams, but both teams were hot coming in. And I want to start with the Warriors side of this. I think that you can say for the Nuggets, they got incredible performances from Russell Westbrook and Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon puts up 38 points. Russ gets a triple-double. And this is the sort of stuff that you have come to expect from Russell Westbrook, especially, right?
That's right. I mean, when Russell Westbrook was with the Clippers his first season and they go into the playoffs, Paul George is already out for the season, which, we might talk about that later. Yeah. And Kawhi Leonard didn't play after game 2 because he tore his meniscus. Remember that year, in the middle of the year, there are people saying Russell Westbrook's time in the NBA was coming to an end because of his toxic time with the Los Angeles Lakers. And what they didn't realize was that put Russell Westbrook in position to succeed, and he's going to do something. He might not win you the game, but he's going to produce and put other people in position to produce as well. And we saw that in the 2023 playoffs against the Suns. We went to Phoenix last year towards the end of the season when they needed to clinch a playoff spot, and Russell Westbrook put up a big-time triple-double, a historic triple-double for him in Phoenix. That was a late-season performance quite like this one. Guys not playing, right? And everyone has this thing where it's like, I'm going to watch a game because the star is playing. And if the star doesn't play, you think it's not worth watching that game. If you missed the game because of that on Monday night, then shame on you. And you have a month to make up for it because there's going to be a lot more of these wacky games where you don't know what's going to happen. I was very interested in seeing the game. I saw how the game Saturday night ended in Denver when the Wizards, Jordan Poole, former Warrior, pulls up in front of Russ and games them, right? And Michael Malone was upset. Nikola Jokić was like, we're not good at certain aspects of the game. And then he doesn't play. Guys who are playing, that's where the focus needs to be. We always say, without this guy, without that guy, shorthanded, whatever. Who's playing? Who's lining up and who's got to actually play well? Because these guys are all pros. And
I
Russell
thought their
Westbrook,
energy was awesome. I mean, it starts with Russ, right? But even MPJ was active on the glass, active defensively. And obviously Aaron Gordon scoring 38 points. You tip your cap if you're the Warriors to that. But I think they flat out got outplayed. The Warriors were sloppy. The Warriors offense, they couldn't make shots outside of Steph. And even Steph struggled kind of to get going for a bit. Look, the Warriors have yet to play anyone with this new addition and still haven't played anyone yet. I will give them the benefit of the doubt and say they came out flat. There's a veteran team that maybe was saying, oh, we got an easy night. We'll pull this out. But I think that there's some glaring issues there with them. Law, what did you see, especially in the struggles down the stretch?
Well, you mentioned playing, flat. I mean, I don't think the Nuggets played particularly smart in this game. I mean, no. AG and Russ had 14 turnovers between them. You're supposed to lose a game if you give up 27 points off turnovers on the road, no matter who's playing. But the Warriors just got outworked. Like, Denver had 18 offensive rebounds. I think a lot of it just came down to Denver their defense has been embarrassing, and they finally played with some pride on that, and they made things hard. Like Steph missed 10 out of 14 threes. The rest of the Warriors, man, they made only 4 out of 19 threes, and jump shots are a little bit harder to come from when you got guys making your catches tough. They're bumping you off the ball. Again, Denver, I don't think, played with any sense of we need to be smart about things. Like, they sent the Warriors to the line 27 times, but the shooting wasn't just limited. The poor shooting wasn't just limited to the field. I mean, Golden State missed 12 free throws as well. 4 of those missed free throws were by Jimmy Butler, right? So I think when it comes down to it, is Denver, they outworked Golden State, but I think any team that's going to play the Warriors, whether it's the regular season or a playoff series or a play-in game, you never know. Your MO to play that team is to not be intimidated. Don't be intimidated by Draymond Green. Jimmy Butler's going to go to his way into fouls. He's a foul merchant too, damn it. And we all know how Stephen Curry gets his. Like, he is a guy who continuously works off the ball to get to where his best spots are. If you turn the ball over against Golden State, it's usually instant death because of their ability to hunt threes off of the fast break. You have to be locked in enough to not be intimidated and play physical. And now that they have Jimmy, not send him to the line a bunch of times. And I think that's what Denver did. They started big. And if you're going to have Russ is going to play at a 10 all the time. And if you can withstand the mistakes, the one way you withstand mistakes is to make mistakes hard too. Go after those offensive rebounds. Some of those fouls might turn into turnovers. And that's kind of how they won, along with Aaron Gordon going back to Archbishop Mitty for a night.
And also, I will say this, stuff that stood out to me for the Warriors: Kuminga, Draymond, Jimmy Butler. That's some spacing problem. I mean, that is a huge spacing issue.
They're not a spectacularly good shooting team.
No,
Dave.
And Kuminga's going to be the guy that has to figure it out. He's the guy that's going to have to figure out how to play around those guys, or he's not going to be able to close games for sure. And that probably is an issue. Let's swing it to the Wolves losing to the Pacers. Look, this is a great win for the Pacers. Great win. Obi Toppin was amazing, including hitting just an incredible bank 3 in overtime to keep him in it. And then for the second week in a row, Law, we have a Pacers win on a fading out of bounds in that left corner 3-pointer, because Obi Toppin hits that shot. And, just with very little time left on the clock for the Wolves. This is a big win for the Pacers because, like we mentioned, they were down 4 starters. No Halliburton, no Nesmith, no Miles Turner. I mean, no Pascal Siakam. And by the way, Andrew Nembhard got into it with Rudy Gobert and got ejected. So, they're down 5 key players. And basically they pull this out of nowhere. And, just a gutty win. They're now tied for the 4 seed with the Bucks because of this win, one that they probably didn't think they were going to get. The Pacers, man, they just play tough. They've got this high ceiling because of that style of play.
Yeah, it's about depth. I wrote a story last week at The Athletic, and some of y'all might have seen it in print, the New York Times, about the Indiana Pacers. This is a team that was like the Minnesota Timberwolves in the conference finals last year. We don't talk about it because they're the Pacers, and because there's other teams in the East that you'd rather talk about. But the Indiana Pacers are a good team. They're in the middle of a 5-7. So that's one of the reasons why they mass rested or sat guys. I mean, and those guys, there have been guys who have been banged up. I mean,
especially Halliburton
missed a bunch of, Halliburton missed a bunch of games last week. TJ McConnell, he had 13 assists in this game. I think he assisted all the threes. Shout out to Thomas Bryant, because Thomas Bryant made 1 3 all game, and it was in that left corner before Toppin was fading in that same corner to win the game. But McConnell hit those guys for assists, and McConnell also got himself to the rim against Jaden McDaniels to force overtime. This is after they smoked the lead. And that's what is tough about the Pacers. They can have guys missing. We saw it in the conference finals. Even though they lost to Boston, they kept those games close, shorthanded. Halliburton missing games. Mathurin obviously didn't play in the playoffs. because they have, one, a lot of guys playing. Two, they have a style of play that you have to adjust to.
Rick Carlisle has done this his entire coaching career. I mean, if you think about those Dallas Mavericks teams where it was always just he would pick up, scrap heap small guard and they would have, great runs and obviously have to play a lot of minutes. So I think that there's a culture there in the organization. Like the next man up thing is it's like a real thing that they do there. And those guys all get run all year long, partially because, so many of these guys are in and out of the lineup for them. Let's swing it to the Wolves, because this is a bad loss for the Wolves, just like it was a bad loss for the Warriors. Even though they've been hot, this is one you have to get. Have to.
And this is what the Wolves do, to be honest with you. The win streak was great. They needed it. And I don't apologize for win streaks against teams that aren't exactly murderers row. I think the only team with a winning record that the Timberwolves beat during this streak was when they went to Denver and blew those guys out. So I think you got to give credit for just being consistent enough to win games for 2.5 weeks straight, which is what Minnesota did. Give Minnesota credit tonight for coming back from down 15, giving themselves a chance to win this game. They were up with a minute to go. But this is the kind of loss that makes it clear how tight things are in the West with the play-in situation, with that 6 seed that everybody wants just to, not have to deal with a 1 or 2 game, scenario that could end your season. And this is, Minnesota, they miss Rudy Gobert down the stretch.
Yeah.
You don't have that drive that McConnell had if Rudy's in the game protecting the rim and possibly forcing a jump shot when you're shorthanded. They're not the deepest team, especially if Chris Finch is literally not going to play the guys he was playing, while certain guys like Dante DiVincenzo, Gobert, and Julius Randle were out. And so that's a tough loss. I don't think they brought it defensively tonight consistently, and it's going to be interesting. The team we're not going to talk about because they didn't play is the Clippers. The Clippers really needed those results. They're stuck right now in 8th. And they need losses by the Warriors and Timberwolves. And it didn't look like those losses were coming with the streaks that those respective teams were on. Now you look at the standings and you're like, well, let's see what happens in 4 weeks, because the Clippers, they don't have the tiebreaker over Minnesota, but they're closer in the loss column. And they do have the tiebreaker against the Warriors and played them in the last week of the season. All these games matter.
Yeah, we did a big update on the seeding, and to update that, the Clippers are now only 1 game back of Minnesota and the Warriors, because neither one of them, could make up any ground. Quickly before we go to the break, the Rockets managed to come back. They were down. I had no idea that they had come back until it was a couple minutes into overtime. I'd flipped over because there was less than a minute left and they're down 8. I'm like, there's no way. They go on a 10-2 run, force overtime. They somehow fought off a 46-point Quentin Grimes game, which is just an incredible performance from him, because the Sixers have nobody out there except for Quentin Grimes. But this was I thought, a scrappy win for the Rockets, not just because Fred VanVleet got ejected for a flagrant 2, but this is the sort of stuff, again, like it's March. You are going to run into flat nights, and how you respond matters.
Yeah, I think the Rockets are a little scarier than they get credit for, because not only will they defend every now and again, I mean, obviously tonight was not a night for defense for the most part, but I'll tell you what, I'll give them credit for the defense they played in the third quarter. They were down 25 with 10 minutes let go in the third quarter, and they tied it by the end of that quarter.
Yeah.
Found time to be down 10 in the fourth quarter, forced overtime, and then survived in overtime. If the Rockets make shots, like Jalen Green's going to be inefficient. He's going to take a bunch of shots. It's going to be nasty looking, whatever. But if someone like Jabari Smith Jr. is going to get hot and play with confidence, I like Jabari Smith Jr. Yeah. He's tall. He can shoot. He defends. He rebounds. He just doesn't do it consistently. And he doesn't have the ball skills that make you think his ceiling is going to be high enough, not on this team. But if that dude can make shots and play with some, just some hair on his damn chest, then he's going to be a problem and an X factor, especially considering he's coming off the bench. Like, I think that, Ime Udoka has determined that he's not going to start. Jabari's not going to start
Right.
under any circumstances. Amen Thompson took his starting job, and then Amen Thompson sprays his ankle, and he's still not going to start Jabari Smith. Tari Eason's going to start. And you know what? If Jabari Smith Jr. can accept that role and determine he's going to crush whoever is in the second unit opposite him, that's going to be a difference maker, because the Houston Rockets have good players in that starting lineup. And they're going to have good players when Amen comes back. And then Tari Eason, Jabari Smith Jr., they need one more reserve to really make you feel like they're going to win more than one playoff series. I think the Rockets, out of a lot of teams in the West that are quite mid, they're going to make a case they might be the 2 seed if they handle their business over the last 4 weeks. And they have the head coach who's going to keep them accountable to do those things over these last, just remainder of the month at the very least.
They're in the seat right now. Quickly, you mentioned it a little bit earlier. Paul George out for the season. Give me 30 seconds. What's happening with him this summer? Just your guess.
My guess is that Paul's probably played his last game there. I mean, I saw Daryl Morey give a contract to Chris Paul that he probably didn't want to give him, run it back, tweet and everything. And then James Harden said, we'll figure it out, when they couldn't beat the Warriors in round 2. And Chris Paul was sent with a first round pick and Russ for Russ to OKC just to get off of that deal. This was a deal that we probably could have saw coming. It was a matter of really not even Paul staying healthy. It was Joel. And both of those guys, they didn't even make it past St. Patrick's Day. I have no disrespect to Paul, because that dude is year 15, but his body and those years, that mileage is not going to make that contract look good for whoever has it for the remainder of the deal.
Yeah, it's a rough season. Powerful Law Murray. Go read the power rankings over at The Athletic. Guys, stick around after the break. Fred Katz goes deep on the Knicks and also the disorganization of the Phoenix Suns. The New York Knicks are somehow surviving without Jalen Brunson. So we had to get Fred Katz on here to lay it all out. He just wrote a big piece over at The Athletic, which you can read, about how the Knicks are stealing points essentially on offense. Fred, Jalen Brunson went down. I thought it was downhill. I was very nervous they were going to be able to hold on to the 3 seed. How are they going to score all these clutch minutes? But they've been doing okay.
Yeah, they're doing okay. And part of it is because of what's happening on the other end of the floor, right? I mean, for as great of a player as Jalen Brunson is, he just has weak points on defense. He doesn't have the size, and he doesn't have the speed, and he doesn't necessarily have the strength, and the Knicks end up hiding him. And what ends up happening a lot of times late in games when the Knicks are at full strength is that the opponents will put Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns in pick and roll after pick and roll, or just action after action. And when you can get 2 subpar defenders into the same action, something good will often happen to the offense in those times. Deuce McBride is in the starting lineup for him right now, and nobody is arguing the Knicks are better without Jalen Brunson. Like, this story was the opposite of the Knicks are better without Jalen Brunson. This was the Knicks are limited without Jalen Brunson. Here are the ways they're trying to make up for it. But there is one part of the game in which Deuce McBride over Jalen Brunson is an upgrade, and that's on the defensive end, where McBride is, I think, their best point of attack defender of smalls this year. I think he's actually superior to Mikal Bridges right now in that aspect. And you can watch how he guarded Stephen Curry in their most recent game when they played on Saturday night.
Well, he's physical.
He is really feisty. Yes.
Yeah. That's a huge difference between him and Mikal Bridges, right?
And he's long. And that's a huge difference between him and Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson's physical, but he's not as fast as Deuce McBride. He doesn't have the agility of Deuce McBride, and he doesn't have length. Deuce McBride isn't very tall. He's got a long wingspan. And he's good at chasing guys around screens. He's good at guarding at the point of attack. He's good at guarding pick and rolls. And he's really relentless. Like, the effort level is insanely high with him at all times. And he doesn't really gamble very much, which is what you like to see at the point of attack as well. And all of a sudden, you go from the Knicks having 2 weak points defensively in their starting lineup to you've got Deuce McBride at the top of it. Mikal Bridges doesn't have to guard the other team's best player every single second of every single night, like he's been doing for most of this year. OG Anunoby can just wall off one side of the court. Josh Hart can do his Josh Hart things and get into passing lanes. And you've got 4 guys who are pretty good to excellent on the perimeter, depending on the guy you're talking about. And that can insulate Karl-Anthony Towns a little bit better than when you have Brunson out there. They're playing well defensively. They're 2-2 without Jalen Brunson. They've mostly played well defensively. They lost that Warriors game. It was really tight. They could not find ways to score in the half court a lot of the time, especially when Karl-Anthony Towns wasn't scoring. But defensively, they were really good, I thought, against a team that's insanely hot and is really good.
Well, they can switch a little bit better now, right? Like they're just more flexibility. What about Mitchell Robinson? Like you feel like just having him out there has made a big difference for them yet?
I think it's made a difference. I think it depends on the night. There are some times where you see like, oh, he looks really good. I don't think he's there as a rebounder right now. The healthiest version of Mitchell Robinson, like what he was before he injured the ankle when he was at full strength, that's the best offensive rebounder in the NBA. I mean, he is the single best offensive rebounder in the NBA. Right now, he's not the single best offensive rebounder in the NBA. There are a lot of balls that I've seen where he kind of gets a fingertip on it. And you're like, you know what? Fully healthy Mitchell Robinson is tapping that up in the air 4 times and actually coming down on it because he's really quick when he's at full strength on his second jump. Defensively, I don't think he's already all the way there either. That being said, there have been tons of moments where guys have come into the lane, he's rotated over promptly, and a shot just hasn't gone up. They just chose not to go for the layup. And you know, if Karl-Anthony Towns is that guy, that rotation might be coming a little bit later. Or maybe if Towns even hits it promptly, guys just aren't scared of him. They're still putting up the layup. And there's a decent chance that's still going to go in because it's a layup and they're not going to feel deterred by it. So I do think he's been a net positive in that sense. And I do think the Knicks are trying to get to a place to where if Mitchell Robinson can look like himself, even if it's for only 15, 20 minutes a game, I think they would love to be able to get to a place where they could play him and Karl-Anthony Towns together somewhat regularly. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you've got a rim protector behind Towns and that changes their defensive dynamics.
That's when he's been his most successful in his career, was playing with Rudy Gobert and the run that they just had, last season. When I thought about him on the Knicks, it was one of the things I assumed they wanted to replicate was the double big lineup. You get him out there and Karl-Anthony Towns can defend. He just can't be your primary rim protector. And that's, one of the limitations for him. But let's talk about the thing with Cat that he has no limit. And that's the offensive side, because you bring a guy like Cat in to make Jalen Brunson's life easier and to cover when he's not there. So how do you feel like Cat has performed since Jalen Brunson's been out as he is the number one offensive option now?
Without question. And I think until that Warriors game the other night, I would actually say he's been struggling of late. He hurt his knee late in the game a few weeks ago, and he hasn't quite looked the same ever since hurting the knee. The shot has been off, finishing around the rim has been off. He's had stretches where he's kind of just not really touched the ball much during games. He hasn't really looked like the guy who was making a case for first team All-NBA in the early part of the year. I'm not saying he's fallen out of the All-NBA conversation. He just hasn't played at that level until that Warriors game. He got into foul trouble in the Warriors game. I thought it was fantastic in that game. Otherwise, first play of the game, it was just pump fake to the hoop and slam it in. He was insanely aggressive on the offensive boards. He was insanely aggressive attacking the rim the entire time through. That's kind of what they need. They've been trying to get him post-ups a lot. That's something they've been going to more with Brunson out. They're not running as much pick and roll because Brunson is just one of the heaviest pick and roll point guards in the entire league. And you're just not going to be able to replicate that with Deuce McBride, who's much more of an off-ball point guard, or with Mikal Bridges, he's not going to be your, Mikal Bridges is not in the same level of Trae Young and Cade Cunningham, where you're just running pick and rolls with that guy all the time. That's just not the type of player he is. Same thing with OG Anunoby. So you're going to have to find other ways. So I've tried posting up Cat a little bit more. I've always thought if there's one thing I would want to see him get better at on offense, and obviously this is an extraordinary nitpick because he is an unbelievably complete offensive player.
Flamethrower.
Yes. I've always thought the thing that I would want to see him get better at is just getting better post positioning before he receives the basketball.
Yeah, that running hook that he gets himself into is because he doesn't get a deep enough seal. Like he's forced into, he's able to be pushed off the block and he's forced into that running hook that he hits at a high rate, but it's not the kind of shot. I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah. And I think it's got to be the reason why I feel like it's the thing I would want to see him get better at is because I feel like it should be easy for him to get better. It's got to be a mentality thing. I've spoken about it with him a little bit. I've never really gotten a great answer as to why. I think he's more comfortable in the mid post because then he can turn around and go to a face up game when he's in the mid post. So he kind of almost likes that, but he's it's not like he shies away from physicality. For all the talk of Kat's reputation of soft or whatever else, like Kat is one of the most physical offensive players in the NBA without question. The dude goes right at everybody on his drives. He goes right at everybody on his faceoffs. He will battle with you on his face-ups. He will battle with you for every single offensive rebound. Like, he is crazy physical down low. So it's not a comfort with physicality thing. I think it's a comfort with the geography of the floor thing. And I would just love to be able to see him get a little more comfortable catching the ball with a foot in the paint, because he's so big and he can just turn around. And sometimes it's okay to go get the ball in the mid post. I asked Tibbs about it recently, and Tibbs was talking about, like, sometimes if he's got a center on him, usually that center is going to be less skilled, less quick than he is. So you want to go out to the mid post as opposed to all the way down low, where you're allowed to get away with more stuff according to the rules. Like, it's not a foul, stuff that you do in the post that if you do, 12 feet from the rim. And on top of that, Cat can use his quickness better when he's farther away from the rim. It gives him more room to operate.
He probably draws fouls at a much higher rate when he catches mid post and can rip and go.
Yep. But that being said, there are a lot of times when opponents will put a wing or a small on him. And the Knicks are going to see that in the playoffs, whether Jalen Brunson's there or not. They're going to see wings and smalls on him in the playoffs. Lord knows they're going to see that against Boston. You're going to see Drew Holiday guarding Cat at times, like 100%. Not like switching on to Cat. Like, you're going to see Drew Holiday like guarding him. And that's if they get past Detroit, who is an incredibly physical defense, and a guy like Isaiah Stewart, who is strong as all hell, but Cat's got like 5 inches on. A guy who is that much smaller than you, push him back, man. Like, push him back before you get the basketball, do your work early, and you're good. And that's something that I would love to see if I were the Knicks. Otherwise, I mean, he's an extraordinary.
What about getting back to some of that high post offense that they used to run, with Hartenstein? And I mean, that was something I expected with Cat. This guy can score at 3 levels. Like, he can shoot that elbow jumper. Like, that's in his game. But it seems like with Cat on the Knicks, it's his offense either starts on the wing or down in that mid post, and they're leaving this space in the middle just wide open. I understand Jalen Brunson operates there quite a bit, but this would be such a way to give Jalen a little bit of a break by having Cat as this hub. I mean, he's such a great passer. He's one of the better passers on this team.
I agree. I think it's a great point. It's something that maybe they could get to a little bit more. Ultimately, I think Cat has his spots on the floor where he's the most comfortable. And he likes to operate out of those spots. Guys have their spots where they're the best. And I think Cat likes getting it on the wing and either being able to go up to shoot or being able to just catch and go and attack and drive from there. I think he likes being able to operate from the mid post and being able to go to whether it's a hook shot or a face up or a drive or back guy down or whatever it is. I think those are the spots where he's generally the more comfortable, or obviously he's screening in the pick and roll, which he's been doing way less since Jalen Brunson went down, because there just aren't those pick and roll combinations. There are some guys also who he runs pick and roll with. For example, you actually look at the numbers. I think the Josh Hart, Karl Anthony Towns pick and roll is the 4th most efficient pick and roll combination in the NBA right now, which is crazy.
All right. What kind of sample size is that?
It's amongst qualifying pick and roll combos. Yeah, it's not like they've run like 6 of them. Like they run like 6 or 7 per 100 possessions. So it's amongst qualifying pick and roll combos. However, you go look at it, and what does the Josh Hart, Karl Anthony Towns pick and roll look like every single time? It's Cat coming over and trying to drag Hart's defender over into a switch, and then getting a post up, and Hart tossing Cat the ball and a post up. And there are certain things like that where it's just like we talk about actions so simplistically, where it's like once the guy gets the ball, but there's stuff you can do away from the ball to make things a little bit easier for Cat. You can set low cross screens in the post, try to get stuff either. The Knicks have absolutely tried some of that kind of stuff as well. And we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised
when Mitchell Robinson's out there. That little 54 screen down in the post, I think is going to be bread and butter for them, just like it was for Gobert and Cat, to get into some of those post-ups. I mean, I do think that Mitchell Robinson Cat pairing is the thing that I'm watching for the next month as we're heading into the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a really interesting one because look, Lord knows if Tom Thibodeau can reasonably justify playing a legitimately good rim protector on a team that every single human being who has seen them play for 1 second knows needs rim protection.
Yeah.
Then that guy with those players in this situation, if he doesn't opt to play the rim protector, I'm calling it the biggest upset in NBA history. So if Mitchell Robinson looks like Mitchell Robinson and he's able to play real minutes and the Knicks need a rim protector and Tibbs is coaching that team, guess what's going to happen? And everybody and their mother agrees they need a rim protector.
Yeah.
Guess what's going to happen? The guy who goes to bed and dreams about rim protection. Isaiah Hartenstein once told me when I was covering the Knicks, Isaiah Hartenstein once told me that when every time he rises for verticality, he can hear in his mind Tibbs yelling at him.
That's amazing.
Okay.
All right.
You can hear Tibbs yell. This is Tibbs' thing.
I love it. Okay. Before we get out of here, I promised you that we would talk about the Phoenix Suns. They are so oddly bad for a collection of, great to decent players. Like they don't have a lot of bad players. What is your opinion on what has happened with the Suns? I mean, it feels like an implosion rather than something that where they didn't have talent.
It is a great example of why you play the games. I thought they were going to be really good. I was on the Suns bandwagon coming into the year. I thought they were going to win a lot of regular season games. I thought they were going to be really good. I liked their offseason moves. Everybody loved the Tyus Jones signing. They were going to have another year together. It's a great example of why you play the games and why basketball isn't like baseball, where you just plug 9 players, and if they're all great into a lineup, they'll all be great individually and the team will be great. And sometimes the sum of your parts is less than your whole. And that's kind of where the Suns are at as much as any other team, certainly in the Western Conference. I mean, it's them and Philly as like the 2 teams in the league who
and
fit
at least
that
with Philly,
category.
At least with Philly, you can say they were snake bitten. Everyone was hurt all year. Okay, not that that's a good thing, but at least if you're an optimist, you can say, okay, well, it can't be this bad again. Whereas with Phoenix, we're looking at it's a teardown essentially. They've already tried to shop KD. It seems like he's going to be moved this summer. But what do they do? How long is Booker dealing with this? Is Mike Budenholzer even going to be back next year? I mean, there's so many questions that I just didn't expect to have about Phoenix at this point in the season. I figured maybe if they lost in the playoffs, we might have some of these conversations. But now it doesn't even look like they may not catch the Mavericks for the play-in. They have one of the hardest schedules left. They've got a game and a half to make up, and somehow they just can't win a game. So they may not even make the play-in.
Totally. And look, they can't guard. They're bottom 5 in defensive efficiency right now. They just can't guard. They don't have rim protection. Their point of attack defense has not been good. They don't rebound on either side of the floor. They've been bottom 10 defensive rebounding, bottom 10 in offensive rebounding all year. They're not forcing turnovers. They don't get into passing lanes. We talk about how offensive players want to get to their spots. We talk about Towns wanting to get to his spots. And ultimately, that's good offense is trying to get to my spot in the most efficient way possible. Where am I the most comfortable? And how can I get there in the most efficient way possible? Right? That's good offense. Good defense is how circuitous can I make your route to your spot? How can I make you just banana all the way around and make you look like a center fielder who can't judge a fly ball on the way to this thing, right? And that's good defense. And you watch guys playing Phoenix and they just walk right to their spots every time. Every time. And that's how you get the shots you want, even if there's somebody there. And that's how you get the buckets you want, even if there's somebody there. It looked good in the beginning of the year too. It looked good, and
they have the ability to hit 9
together.
shots in a row, right? Like their offense is predicated on, you know what? We've got great shooters. We're going to hit some shots, but they have no offensive flow either. You know, it's funny. They have no defensive cohesion and no offensive flow whatsoever. The guys at this point in the season, they don't look like they have plays to run.
Yeah. Well, if you asked me what is the biggest problem with the Phoenix Suns right now, and you said I had to answer in one word, which you didn't do that. And you didn't say that.
But I will.
But you will.
Through telepathy.
My answer would be organization. And it's not just about organization on the offensive end. It's not just about organization on the defensive end. It's up and down the entire franchise. I mean, look at how they handled the Jimmy Butler and the Bradley Beal situation, right? They were trying to find a third team for Bradley Beal. The whole time I'm reporting, they haven't asked Bradley Beal for their list. So is the plan to try to negotiate a trade and then be like, oh, Brad, would you go here? And then find out, oh, no, he won't go here. So we just wasted everybody's time, including our own. That seems to me like very basic information the front office should be privy to and was not for whatever reason. Then at the very last second in the chase for Jimmy Butler, they start shopping Kevin Durant around. That was impulsive. That was lack of organization, lack of a plan. That was, okay, well, now let's see if we can do it with Durant. On top of that, they negotiated a trade with Golden State that at the very least got very far down the line until KD said, I don't want to do that. But why did you waste, again, your time and everybody else's time negotiating something that KD eventually didn't want to do when you could have just gotten this information from him at the very start? The lines of communication something is off. The lines of communication there are off. There's a lack of organization going on up and down the franchise right now. And it shows on the court, but it shows in how they act as well. It shows in how they acted in the Nick Richards and the Yusuf Nurkic trades. They did those trades backwards. They did the Nick Richards trade where they traded away 3 second-round picks for Nick Richards weeks before the deadline, where they didn't necessarily have to do that. Then they did the trade where they traded their own 2031 unprotected pick to Utah for 3 worse ones, which everybody assumed meant they had another deal lined up, but they didn't.
Right.
Lack of organization. Then they used one of those first round picks to get off of Nurkic, send him to Charlotte, the same place they got Nick Richards from, and just take back expiring salary. Now, if you reverse those trades, if you wait on the Nick Richards trade just a little bit, and Nick Richards couldn't be that important to you because guess what? It hasn't really changed that much. And
they're playing like 20 minutes a night.
He's not your starter anymore. It's like Mason Plumlee is playing over him now. So it couldn't have been that big of a deal. You can survive another week or two without Nick Richards. If you just wait on it, instead of trading a first round pick to get off of Nurkic and 3 second round picks to acquire Richards, you might be able to loop that into the same trade, like a Caleb Martin or Cody Martin, I should say, is not in that deal now. And instead it's Nick Richards' salary that's coming back, and you get Nick Richards and you get somebody else, you get off of Nurkic, you send over one of those first round picks that you got in the Utah deal, and maybe Charlotte would do that. Maybe Charlotte says, you know what, give us a second too. But you're saving 1 or 2 second round picks in that scenario. Yeah. They did the trades backwards. Lack of organization. They are just not quite organized in anything that they're doing. And if it was one thing, if it was one element that I could point to and I was like, that's not organized, I almost always give franchises the benefit of the doubt on this stuff because they know what's going on behind the scenes in a way that none of us on the outside ever could, no matter how plugged in we are. No matter how plugged in we are, they just are there. They know it. And there's always something, or often something, that we can't even think of or surmise that's happening that makes it make sense, because normally things that happen make sense. So when it happens one time, I tend to give places the benefit of the doubt and be like, okay, you know what? We don't know. We don't know everything. When it's happening perpetually is when you're like, okay, what's going on here and why is this happening? And that's kind of where I'm at with the Suns right now.
I think we'll probably find out this summer. Fred Katz, go and read him at The Athletic. Thank you, Fred, for hanging out and going deep on the Knicks and the Suns. Thanks to Law Murray for filling in for S tonight. Had a good time recapping the games. For Fred Katz and Law Murray, I'm Dave DuFour, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.